unit in Ikorodu, Lagos. In Kaduna, we have 86 in Kano, Sokoto, Katsina, Borno, Taraba, and so on. And promoting affordability mortgages, like we have said, down payment assistance and subsidies, introduction of government-backed down payment assistance program. Maybe like a housing palliative. Housing is the only sector that have not received any palliative. So we need a mortgage palliative to ease this process. We are grateful again to the PENCOM, for allowing workers to be drawing down on the RSA, retirement savings account. Now you can access your 25%. But definitely, that also need to be checked, because we try to define it. Is it a grant or a loan? So majority of the people accessing that 25% ending up not utilizing it. Our success story, like I've said, we are the Federal Housing Authority, despite the challenges. The Gwarimpa is sitting on 1,000 plus hectares of land, and we delivered 4,000 houses through the FHA Mortgage Bank. We were able to facilitate access to those houses under what we call 50-50 unbeatable offer. You pay 50%, and FHA Mortgage Bank will originate mortgage on the balance of the 50% at 6% interest rate for a period of 60 months. We did that in Maitama, Asokoro, Lugbe, Karu, and Kado. If you take away what FHA have done in Abuja, Abuja will be left with a lot of vacant locations. So we're proud to associate with the Federal Housing Authority. Again, we have collaborated successfully with genuine private estate developers. And, the locations are there because of time. Again, we are equally grateful to the Family Home Funds. As it stands today, we are the #1 primary mortgage bank. They are collaborating with us to deliver houses in Luvu, Nasarawa, Millennium City, Kaduna, in Delta, Abriba, in Ogun. We call it Macomb City, in Birnin Kebbi, in Giri, Abuja. Our team in FHA is made up of highly motivated staff who are very aggressive, creative, committed, determined, focused, innovative, and unassuming. We know our numbers very well. Numbers is the name of our game business. Together, we generate these numbers and are disposed to doing so. Right now, in FHA Mortgage Bank, we have profile, segregated customer base of well over 40,000. We can punch our system and give you profile customers that can afford 15 million naira houses. We can give you 2,000 that can afford 20 million naira home ownership. We can give you 5,000 off-takers that can afford 7.5 million naira home ownership. And using that data, you can plan very well, because you can work from answer to question. In conclusion, addressing the challenge of availability, accessibility, and affordability in mortgage finance is vital for fostering home ownership and bridging the housing deficit in Nigeria. The proposed strategies such as government intervention, policy reforms, strengthening institutions, and enhancing accessibility, affordability can significantly contribute to making mortgage finance more accessible and affordable for off-takers. It is crucial for various stakeholders, including government, financial institutions, developers, regulators, to collaborate and implement these strategies to achieve sustainable progress in Nigeria's mortgage finance. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please, a round of applause again. Once again, making that which is complex seem so simple and easy. Thank you very much, sir, for that presentation. We'll be ready now to go into the question, answer, and comment sections. But as I mentioned before we do that, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, shall we receive to the podium for his brief remark the Commissioner for Housing, Lagos State, Honorable Moruf Fatai Akinderu. Shall we welcome him with a round of applause as he comes up to...
Good afternoon, all. I want to stand on the existing protocol. Actually, I came with an address, but from what I've listened to so far, I think it's important that I speak from my heart, and also for us to have time. Actually, I was given a topic, which is leveraging on the rent-to-home program that we have successfully carried out in Lagos. And we have done this via technology. I'm talking about the using current technology that is available as at that time, which I think will always continue to evolve. What actually happened in Lagos is that we found ourselves in a situation that we have a lot of demand, but we lacked supply. At a particular point during Fashola administration, it was challenged that Lagos was building for the rich, especially if anybody can recall the debate between him and his opponent, that the houses that they were building in his first term were meant for the rich. Ashwaju actually escalated, the current president escalated activities in that sector while he was there. And at that particular moment, we have various housing schemes that are still existing there now under Ashwaju that were sold to even the market lead women and artisans as low as 2 million, 3 million. We have that in Ifakojai. But when Fashola came, he came with his own design, and I felt that everyone should live in a livable home. But the prices did not come easily. So he decided to set up Lagos Mortgage Board. And the idea is to have mortgage, that's 30% of what you present, 30% of the cost of the homes, and you pay over 10 years. We also, at that particular moment, they also discovered that a lot of people were still unable to get into that scheme. Then there were a lot of debates along the line on how can we make sure that we bring in a lot more people into the housing ladder. And that was the thinking before Akinwumi Ambode came on board. Akinwumi Ambode also brought up his own idea on the best way to approach delivery of housing units, especially for the low-income earners. In Lagos, we do not really have issues with high net worth individuals, but we have challenges in making sure that people who are in low-income cadre are able to get into that ladder. So the issue, then the product, rent-to-home, came into being. That is looking at it from perspective of what can we really do to assist the low-income earners. And the first thing is we escalated the idea of people coming into that scheme with a 5% of the cost, and you pay over the next 10 years at simple interest rate of 6%. But the numbers of people that applied were far higher than what we had available. Hence, at that particular moment, there was this idea of having to go and do a dip, which he did throughout the period. But the period of Ambode, there was a lull in the housing sector in Lagos. When Babajide Sanwo-Olu came on board, he gave us directives that we have to strategically focus on the low-income earners, and that whatever unit that we build via budgetary allocation, 75% of those units will go into rent-to-own program, while 25% will go for the outright buyers. Apart from that, he also directed that the design for both the low-income earners and the high-net-worth individuals must be the same. But the cost, the prices are different. I'll give an example. We concluded 492 in Igondo, and he asked us to check around and find out the going price as at that time. We came back with 15 million. Then the governor said, sell at 10 million. And 75% of it will go for rent-to-own as product, while the Ministry of Housing will sell directly 25%. And that's exactly what we did. And he also said we should increase the percentage that goes to the civil service from 10% to 20%. Apart from that, they are also entitled to a 40% rebate. So what that means effectively is that if you are buying a unit for 10 million, as a civil servant, you effectively be paying 6 million. Where am I going? No, before I go to that point, the same facility, the same design, everything that you have in Igondo is what you have in Odonosa, which is in Agbowa. Agbowa, we are selling right now at about 6.5, 3-bedroom. And if you now go to Igondo, it's the same thing that you have in Iponri. And we sold Iponri at 30 million, while we sold Lekki 1 at 50 million for high net worth individuals. But what we discover eventually is that for a civil servant, for you to be able to afford a one bed in Igondo, that is around 5 million, 4.55 million. A 2-bed, that's around 6.5. You have to be around level 14 officer, even at that, for you to be able to move in. So whenever I see people talk about mortgage, we most often ignore the fact that one of the root of the matter, why it's not actually working, is the takeaway income of average Nigerians. And I also always believe from practical experience that it is not for you only to sell your product. It's also for us to look at it, because the only way for us to move forward is when we accept the fact that the average takeaway is so low. You can see the deliberate effort that Lagos has made, which is not sustainable. And that has even further made us to challenge a lot of our developers to stop looking at the high-end area and start looking towards this side. And again, what is the cost of fund? If you are talking of foreign investment coming in, we had an experience. We encourage even green initiatives in Badagry, Dale. By the time they finished, when they came in, it was around 300 and something. By the time they were leaving, it's almost 500. At the end of the day, they didn't break even. Lagos had to also intervene to see so that they can find, so that we can encourage more people to go in. So, as a commissioner, if you approach me that you are bringing in money from abroad, the question I'll ask you is that, is the money coming here to live, to stay, or just want to come in and do business and leave? If you want to come in and do business and leave, I would say we have no business with you. But if the money is coming here to stay, because we may not accept that fact. Naira as a currency is a strong currency within Nigeria. It's only when you externalize it that you have issue. So if the money is coming here to stay, I can easily do business with you. So in Lagos, we have been very successful when it comes to rent-to-own program. And we leverage on technology because we have a way of analyzing people who are coming in. You have to be a first-time buyer, and you also have to meet certain conditions. You have to be living in Lagos. Must have a card, and you must also be a tax payer in Lagos. And it's not only meant for civil servants. If you are also doing your own business or in private business, all you need to do is to have guarantors that we stand for you. One of the challenges that we are facing is that it is always difficult, even though the law, state arbitration, and the rest. We discovered that the enabling laws, rentage and mortgage law in Lagos are weak, and we are trying to work on that so that we can give confidence to the investors as well as the tenants. And we have also gone ahead to look out for crooks and sort out and help those that have been duped. We have Lasrera, that's an agency in Lagos that people can approach. We have agents, because of this demand-supply issue, so many people are duped daily. And we have always been encouraging people that if you want to do business in Lagos, you must register with Lasrera. And people can always also check if such developer is registered with Lagos State Government so that they avoid being duped. So I will not want to say much, but I just want to say that there are so many things that we still need to do, especially when it comes to mortgage. People cannot afford this. And then one of our thinking right now is rentage system. That's why I said we are working on the rentage law and the mortgage law to make it more strong so that both sides will have confidence. As we speak, people do not really have confidence in those laws to invest. So we are looking at the rentage system in the sense that nobody is paid yearly. You are paid every month. So we are looking at a institution that we encourage. I have about one or two I'm talking to now that if they are giving me the condition to make sure that we work on those laws, that if the laws gives confidence, they are ready. And that will also help them to be able to access funds like the cooperative fund and pension fund and the rest. Because that means that they pay monthly or quarterly. It is not everybody that want to buy a house immediately. Some people want to start families, and all they need is to rent a place. Why not the decision that it goes in line with the way they receive their income? They receive their income monthly. If we are able to get to that point, back to that point, no, it used to be that way, I think we'll have a lot of progress in the built sector, and the investors too will have more confidence because as we speak, you have so many people owing their landlords because to cover out large sum of money at the end of the year with all these challenges facing us is always tough. I doubt if there is any landlord that can say that he doesn't have a tenant owing him as we speak. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think I would like to stop here so that I won't take much of your time. Thank you very much. I thank the organizer and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable Commissioner for Housing, Lagos State, one more time. A round of applause. Thank you, sir. We appreciate. At this point in time, we would like to open the floor for comments and questions. Please, okay. Can we leave comments to be brief and direct, and questions brief and direct to the point? We'll need the ushers now, please, to move the microphone around. I think we have a comment from Professor here.
I'll be very, very brief. Charles Nyangete is my name. Mr. Adewole, you mentioned about governance being such a critical challenge. So my question is, you said we're more interested in the how. So how do we overcome this challenge? I agree with you entirely. The biggest challenge in Nigeria is the challenge of governance at every level. And then there was a point you made about NMRC. I want to just draw attention to the fact that it is actually a PLC. It's a public limited company. So any day it wishes, it can list itself on the stock exchange, the same way it lists its bonds. So it doesn't need any institutional change in its setup. It's actually a company limited by shares and has private sector as well as public sector shareholders. So that bit is straightforward. It's down whether it wants to do so is up to it. And then for FMBN, a very quick one. Single-digit mortgage really is a feature of the cost of funds. If your funds are coming from the NHF, it's not surprising that you can do that. For others to be able to copy and follow that, they need to have some way of receiving subsidy for the funds they use in providing mortgages. So that's something important. And for Mr. Wall, I think I saw on your slide, you didn't actually read it, the need for creating a liquidity facility. There'll be some who would hold exception to that because we already have, for the mortgage sector, a liquidity facility. A refinance institution is a key liquidity facility, and that is present. It's for us to make those institutions work better for us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we'll try and take 2 questions at a time. Do we have any other question or comment? Okay, please take it to the gentleman behind the prof. So take them 2 at a time so we don't have too much to deal with at once.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My comment goes directly to Mr. Adewole, who printed a very grave picture that there is a drift to the urban areas. And if this urban, he believes that within the next 10 to 20 years, the urban regions will be fully congested. What are you doing? What are the public institutions going to do, or what to do to reverse this drift? Because it is a way of the cities becoming shanties in future, and we must make necessary efforts to reverse the drift. Another thing is that when you look at it, I think on the delivery of the addresses, most of what my takeaway is that there's a delivery shortage. And I think one of the reasons why we have delivery shortages is because there is no adequate planning. Now, if we are trying to do housing projects, there is need for us to go into rural areas, acquire lands, and then do the land, the estate infrastructures. If we don't have estate infrastructures, it will be very difficult for you to not to have problems. There will be delivery problems. There will be high cost. But if there are plans, then people can actually key into your projects at the drawing stages.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. I think one of the last one is that I think there is need for us in this country to also reduce our craze for money acquisition. A lot of money is being stolen by government, by government officials. If this money if they are directed into the housing industries, a lot of the problems will be solved. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
No,
Thank
change
you.
of mind.
So I would want to say when we are going to respond, you can respond with the microphone next to you. You just switch on the power button. When you're done responding, you switch it off so there's no interference with the next person who wants to do so. So it's up to the panel now to respond. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Yep, in terms of governance, big one. I think in all my career now of being a lending, the most significant reason for refusing financing to a potential obligo is corporate governance. Once you have a red flag on the corporate governance, you know it's a no-go area, regardless of the specific qualities of that transaction. So your question is, particularly for us in Nigeria, what can we do to reverse it? And frankly, it's just to do the right thing. One of my own personal biggest regrets at Family Homes Funds was failing on that point, to that extent. When we started, we were very clear that in terms of populating the board, we advertised, we got PwC advertised, we got some of the most brilliant minds interviewed and ultimately selected. But just as we were about to appoint them, some other voice came up and said, no, it has to be politicians because they are the ones who paid for elections. So in the end, the governance became heavily politicized, and that was the beginning of it. So we must do what Singapore did. And if you read Liang Q's book, one of the key things around the development of that country was that for every issue of national development, regardless of where they came from, get the best people to do it. Get the best people to do it. Ensure that corporate governance is key. That includes skills, people who are accountable, people who put the interest of the organization or the institutions ahead of themselves or unrelated parties. I think you can do many things, but if you get that right, I think you are on the road to having a strong corporate governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Prof, good afternoon once more, and thanks. You actually passed a comment, not a question, kind of. It was just a comment, but I would like to give a brief explanation to that comment as well. With regards to us making the single-digit lending rate a big deal for us, it's a big deal simply because it's 6% for the mortgages, and if I do a breakdown of that 6%, we'll all agree it's a big deal. 2% out of that 6% goes to the contributors in the first instance. The second 2% goes to the primary mortgage bank, and so the bank only lives on 2%. And of course, we don't drop from the budget. Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, thank you. So we'll now go. Okay, I think.
I think the
please,
gentleman,
because you've spoken, because of time.
Oh, okay. Just because he asked a question.
Okay, the gentleman.
On planning about the urbanization. I think you are right. We're not good planners, right? And the only commissioner in Lagos is here. Lagos will be overwhelmed in 20 years. It needs to expand. It means potential new towns. It takes you an average of 15 to 18 years to execute a new town project. So if you take England, for example, all of the 7 new towns which will be launched in 2042 have already been identified, and the engineering work and design process has started. We haven't even started that process at all. One, either because we don't realize the enormity of this phenomenon, or as usual, we just spiritualize it as somehow there will be a miracle that will ensure that God will take control. There's no control here.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, sir.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Prof reminded me of the need for, to buttress or to echo the liquidity through the Nigerian Mortgage Refinancing Company, the NMRC. Yes, FHA Mortgage Bank owns 5% of the total portfolio of the Nigerian Mortgage Refinancing Company. Why we are reluctant, actually, to be echoing that is the challenges of drawing from the refinancing company. And, like we have said, the platform, we need to scale down. We are not asking for waiver, but we need to scale down on the eligibility criteria to access the financing. Because, as it stands today, we have a portfolio of well over 12 billion naira from the National Housing Funds. So if we now forward those primary mortgages originated to Nigerian mortgage refinancing, they cannot finance them. Reasons are they are talking of title. Majority of the title are through the Ministerial Pilot Housing Scheme, which has a global CO4 and XYZ, and also private estate developers under the mass housing development, no CO4, no title. But we are saying, take our certificate, share certificate as collateral. That is for the NMRC to decide, and thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Okay. Questions, please, the gentleman here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Engineer Benga Obasa from Stratec Properties Limited. From what we have going on around the world, Africa is the next destination for the world economy. And presently, Nigeria is not looking at that. And we are only talking of having homes only for, at least for ourselves. And the houses we even are talking for the mass housing are the horizontal plan houses. What are we doing about the vertical plan houses that we see in developed countries? That are making them to be economically viable, to be able to retain resources in their own confinement, and to make Nigeria a more economic giant really in Africa. My number 2 question goes to estate development loans in our country has been put under the carpet, and we focus most of our loans through the PMBs and PMIs. For what the current situation masses really need, if the estates are more buoyant to put all this in place, they'll be able to give more houses to the citizens. But because of the challenges that is faced in that sector, it's been put under the carpet. What can the government do to make this sector be more viable again? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll take the next question immediately.
Thank you very much. My name is Adedeji Adeshemoye. Thank you for the presentation, the presenters. I think we should also, now that the minister in the Federal Capital Territory is taking initiatives of having CFO for the mass housing, we should be proactive enough as a bank to start coming up with products that we can eventually use to get the secondary mortgage market working. Number 2 is the fact that if we have the grace to take a decision at Federal Mortgage Bank of moving the limit from 15 to 50 million, we should also have the grace to change the contribution from 2.5 to at least 5 in order to be able to increase the liquidity. Because you cannot be exiting, you cannot be funding without a corresponding liquidity coming in. And it's the same law that we are dealing with. The law that we move from 5 to 15 and then move to 50 now is the same law that we are still obeying if we decide to change from 2.5 and make it 5 and also make it a total, not just basic, because the basic alone cannot work. Thank you very much. I think the liquidity needs to be improved.
All right, thank you. We can take one more question. One more question. So I think there's a gentleman over there. Please take it to him. We don't have much time. We're pressed in for another session that we need to take immediately. So after this, we'll take 2 more questions and then we'll be done with the session. Thank you.
All protocols duly and respectfully observed. My name is Kennedy A.A. Kachala. I want to believe that this forum actually is a renewed hope for affordable housing in Nigeria. Looking at what has taken place in the past, my comment or question rather is directed to our second presenter from Federal Housing Loans Board. Sir, at the tail end of your presentation, you made mention of about 300 Nigerians, if I get you right, that have benefited so far this year from loans. I want to believe that, sir, the number is inadequate. Looking at the gargantuan nature of Nigerian public and civil service, there are ministries that in a year alone, from the headquarters in Abuja and other offices spread across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, you see about 300 or 400 people retiring in a year without housing. I want to appeal that the processes for accessing housing loans should be seamless. I've interacted severally with colleagues who work in other ministries, and they tell me how they use funds, 50,000, for instance, in order to access the loan form. For somebody who is earning 120,000 as a salary in a month, if he is paying 50,000 just for him to access the form, the board may not be aware of that, but there are a lot of bottlenecks in obtaining all these things. So I am not actually going to tell you how it's going to be done, but I believe you have a very good personnel, good human resource that can actually look into all these issues. So if they are actually looked into it, we have a reasonable number of civil and public servants that are actually yearning and thirsty to have houses, affordable houses, within and outside Abuja. But how to get it, how to access funds is usually the major problem. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And so we'll hand over to the panelists now to respond to the questions and comments so far. Just, you can go ahead and switch on your mic, sir, and then you.
Okay. Okay. Take it first.
Actually, there's not much. I don't want to be dragged into saying things I shouldn't say, but I think on the technology issue, you're absolutely right. I left architecture school in 1987. I still see that we're doing exactly the same thing that they were doing. There's been zero development in our design skills. Even worse with engineering, we are still over-engineering buildings. So these are all part of our capacity issues, right? People don't have money to pay decent consultants, so they cut corners and design inappropriately. And frankly, God help you if you decide to live in a 10-story high building today in Nigeria without insurance. You may well be putting yourself at risk. But absolutely right, that is the way to go, particularly in our urban area. In terms of Mr. Adeshiboye's comment, just a passing one on that. Look, you're absolutely right. As Akim said earlier, the National Housing Fund, I think, was first done in the 90s, right? What other thing has done almost about 25 years? And nobody has thought, let us review the numbers behind the assumption that happened when inflation was different, the economic circumstances was different. What stops somebody from saying, let us review the structure of this National Housing Fund? It's purely actuarial issues. Let us review the model every 5 years, every 3 years. It's just been abandoned. And of course, it's not sustainable. And that's why nobody will touch it. It's not sustainable. It's a failed model. So these are part of the things that we really need to address. And you talked about the loans board. I did a lot of work with them while I was at Family Loans Fund. And really, the only thing I can say is that I'm so delighted to hear that they managed to do 300 mortgages this year so far. That is all I will say. And that shows the improvement that has happened there. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me quickly address the two comments that came our way. With regards to estate development loan, all products under the mass housing development financing in Federal Mortgage Bank is referred to as estate development loan. But there is a specific product that was now equally tagged estate development loan. Because by generic interpretation, estate development loan means funding to develop housing estates. So the specific one that was now tagged estate development loan as a product was suspended sometime in 2012, and it was as a result of the fact that the product was structured to be delivering houses for open market, which was technically a wrong approach, because you can't build houses and start looking for people that will buy it. So we've restructured a lot of our products to start with having the demand first, having the off-takers first before going into financing the estate. So estate development loan as a product too will equally take a toll from that. We're going to repackage it and have it to say that before any individual developer that has a land and has a proper title to the land, before he can approach Federal Mortgage Bank for financing, the off-takers must be profiled and established. So the product will come back on board. That's as per that. The second comment came from Mr. Adesemoye. Coincidentally, he's my former board member, and we appreciate him a lot. We do tap from his wealth of experience from time to time. What he said, I totally agree. The only thing is that what Mr. Adewale just said now, yeah, there's need to be reviewing laws from time to time so that it can become more relevant in current terms. However, we've made attempts at several times amending the NHF Act as well as FMBN Act. In actual fact, the last attempt got to the table of the president, and of course, the forces that was more than the force that was pushing it put a stop to it. That is something we should all not be happy about, because it appears some sectional interest took control of the national interest at that point in time. I won't say more than that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think I represent Federal Government's Half Housing Loan Board here. About what I said about 300 units of houses, we all know that government releases mostly come toward the end of the year. So the Governing Council approved 1,115 at their last meeting. Others have been processed, but the 200 has already been paid. Some of them have got their houses. So that 1,115 is being processed. Some of them, some may spill over because this thing has processes. We cannot compromise the system. So that one is, if we want to record it for this year, maybe at the end of December, it may be recorded that we gave out over 1,000. The records are there, you can come. I also have some data here. That's one. Then on the issue of form, before now, the form is 1,000 naira. Before the new administration, you pay and obtain the hard copy. When the present executive came in, it is 2,000 naira. But you pay at the point when you are signing your voucher. Because he said, instead of obtaining form, peradventure, you couldn't get other documents, then you will have lost that 1,000 naira. Why not wait until finally all payment will be made, will be at the point when you are signing your voucher? We cannot compromise that. That is public service. The brokers is still there.
So when you assign your voucher, you will pay that money to the remitter. And then you also obtain your form online now. You don't nobody collects hard copy. So unless you go about, unless for the Mugu, I need to tell people there are 2 lines on our website. I pick one. One is directly linked to the executive secretary. When people say, oh, they collect money from me, I said, no, some people are agents. They patronize loans board, they patronize government offices. You taught their staff. So if you deal with them, then you have subjected yourself to abuse. The website is there. So our problem is that when we have challenge of network, sometimes when we start like this, we don't go back to it. And your IPPRS is your password. Any time of the day, you can access, you can continue. You can fill the first page today. Maybe tomorrow or next, you can continue. I have to advise people. Find time. Your children can even guide you. Some of them are very versatile when it comes to all this or your phone, all this your mobile phone. They want to, you can use your phone even to scan. Some of the adults didn't know, some of the parents didn't know that your phone can do the work of scanning. So, but as well, you are looking for somebody, and like I said, a public servant, they are admin of themselves. The first thing they will say that I don't mind. I say, you mind what? Because you don't want to follow process. Go to the website, enter into just apply now. Follow the process. If you have a problem, ask somebody. Go to business center. You can get this thing done. Nobody's collecting 50,000 is so much for a civil servant to part with. Let me tell you this. Unless you belong to those rank, you will also collect bribe somewhere. 50,000 naira for a civil servant is much. I tell you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
So, and then the process is, we have simplified it. When you come there, as a matter of fact, you can contact the executive secretary. His phone number is there on the website. That is 9999-3965. That's
So the point is, people, we need to subject ourselves to the due process.
Due process.
If you don't follow due process, whatever happens to you, it's at
bear
your
it.
peril.
Thank you
I
very
understand,
much.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the board?
Thank you very much. Actually, it's to commend and appreciate the Honorable Minister, His Excellency, Mr. Wike, for initiating the issuance and granting of the CO4 on the houses developed by through the mass housing development. However, you know, like we've said, most of these houses were purchased via mortgage, and the target is to make them affordable. And if we are charging a 3.5 million naira to issue a CO4, then there will be challenges. So we're appealing that, you know, we will be at the receiving end. The value chain will be definitely distorted.
Yes, it will.
And there will be so much chaos that maybe the center could not be able to hold. So we're appealing that it should be looked into, and, you know, deeper consultation should be made. That is my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take one more, and then we'll round up the session now.
Okay. It's just a quick comment, just to clarify what the position of one of our speakers here, who said that FHA has a lot of resources, a lot of resources at our disposal, but we have not done much. I need to correct that, and because today is his birthday, we have to be on the right standing too. So FHA does not have so much resources at its disposal. We are not on the budget, so we have to work with what is at our disposal, our IGR, and then other levies and then land like contraventions and other fees that we have to come. And also, we think outside the box. We're also talking with trying to go to the market, so we are at the discussion level. So it's not business as usual anymore. So with the right round pegs in the round holes, which Mr. President has set the ball rolling, with the right leadership from the ministry, FHA is poised to do better and to do more. And with the right support, we are going to deliver much more. If we can give 60 units to the low-income earners as rent to own in one of our estates, which means by the time we go through the 6 geopolitical zones, we can naturally do 6,000 units of that. So FHA is a big player in the affordable housing space, and we'll continue to do our bits with the resources we have. With the right support, we will do much better.
Thank you very much. Please, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for all our panelists. I would have to now request that the panelists come forward, just step down so that they can have the group photograph taking before we go into the next one. I know that on the program, so ideally, we're supposed to go for our lunch break now, but we have we consider that it might be better to just run through the program, and when we go for lunch break, we just have our lunch break and we can go on from there. So immediately after this, we'll call on the next set of plenary, and then we would run through that. Thank you. And this is also to use this time to recognize the presence of Dr. Bashir Oshodi, CEO and co-founder, Trust Bank Author. Dr. Bashir, a round of applause for him. Thank you very much, sir. He came in during the plenary. Thank you. We can see you over there. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you. Thank you very much indeed. Yes. All right, thank you very much. So it's time. We will be moving to the next plenary session, which will be digital transformation for affordable housing. Digital transformation for affordable housing. Digitization and data management imperatives for delivering affordable housing. Thank you very much. And to begin this session, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We will have the opportunity to continue our conversations. But at this point in time, I would like to call to begin the plenary session, the next plenary session, Pioneer Chief Executive Officer, Nigeria Mortgage Refinance Company, and MD CEO, Innovative Risk and Investment Solutions Limited, IRS. Shall we welcome the very distinguished Professor Charles Iyangete to the podium with a round of applause as we begin the next session. Also, we'll hear to talk about rent-to-own scheme and other incentives for promoting affordable housing. Okay. Please, let's get Professor Iyangete's presentation set. Can we get Professor Iyangete's presentation set? Then we will move to those of our presenters who are online. Please make sure they are ready to go. We'll be going to two presentations that are virtual: Digital Transformation and Large-Scale Delivery of Affordable Housing by Tony Olang. And shall we also welcome him? He is online. He is the head of Data Center, Digitization and Archival Services, CPF Kenya. And he is virtual. Shall we say hello to him online? Do we have him online now? All right. Welcome. It's good to have you again, Mr. Tony Olang. It's a pleasure. We're looking forward to your presentation. Next, we also have online Leveraging FinTech and PropTech for Affordable Housing. And this will be delivered by Dr. Roland Igbinoba, founder Poison Housing Company and President PropTech Nigeria. This presentation will also be virtual. Because of time exigencies, we're going to mesh the next two presentations. And so we're going to have PropTech FinTech Startups, the success story of Split in rental accommodation by Akintola Desami, our co-founder and CEO Split. Shall we welcome him to the podium with a round of applause as he comes to take his seat? Also, unlocking digital banking for housing finance bank. For Housing Finance Bank, I believe that is. Daniel Essien, co-founder, CEO, Bank Housing, CEO, Bank. Shall we welcome him with a round of applause? Thank you very much, sir. And finally, Housing Investment in Gold, Dukia Gold. Mr. Tunde Fagbemi, Chairman, Dukia Gold. Shall we welcome him also to the podium for this segment? So instead of breaking, we will take everything at once, and when we go for lunch, we don't need necessarily to come back. Thank you very much. So we're going to be quick as usual. Each presenter has about 8 to 10 minutes or so that we can wrap it up. And then afterwards, we will ask our questions and take our comments for this section. Are we ready for Professor Iyangate's presentation? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, hello. I should use the wireless. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, there was a wireless that sounded a bit better. This one sounds a bit dull. Oh, yeah, I'm sure you can adjust that, no problem. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, shall we welcome to the podium for his presentation, Professor Charles Iyangate. A round of applause will be polite. Yes, yes, I believe it is. It's off now? No, it's up.
Thank you, and I'd like to stand on the protocols that's been established. I have in excess of 100 slides to present in 8 minutes. So you do the maths and see how far I can get with that. So the outline of the presentation, I'm really going to set a context, and I think everything else will flow through that. It's rather short time. Next slide. Rather short time to do what I had in mind. In the global context, if you're in the real estate market, you are in the largest market that has ever existed. Global real estate has $326 trillion capitalization. Okay? The residential real estate in itself is 256 trillion of that 326 trillion, about nearly 80%. Commercial real estate is a mere 32, close to 33 trillion of that. All of the global stock markets put together and all of the global debts put together are less than the real estate market. Global debt is 123 trillion. Global equity is 110, just under 110 trillion. Less. Combine them, and it's less than residential real estate. All the gold ever mined on Earth, it's about $12 trillion. The entire GDP of the world, global GDP, is under 100 trillion. It's about 90 trillion. In global terms, if you're looking to construct the 400 plus million houses required, you're talking about 16 trillion business when you add land. It's about 11 trillion when you look at just the construction. So you can imagine just the enormity of what we need to do in order to deliver on the promise of real estate. So it's so critical that we do it with the seriousness that it deserves, and we do it with a commitment that it deserves. Next slide. So I'm saying of the 440 million housing units, next slide please. Of the 440 housing units, we need 16 trillion, 11 trillion for construction, the rest for the value of land. Next slide. If you look at the context of Africa, we require about 150 billion for our construction in the last couple of years. At the moment, maybe we're close to about 150 billion. We are just a tiny drop in the ocean in global terms, and we have the potential to do much more. If we look at affordability, next slide, please. We keep talking about affordability. If we look at affordability, and this is the power of data, and my point is I'm trying to illustrate the power of data and having statistics. If we look at affordability, look at this. The Ghanaians are the least able to buy the properties in their market. 0.1 in terms of the index. The lower the index, the less affordable the houses are. We are not much better, we're 0.2. The South Africans are 2.8, nearly three times more able to buy their properties, which is about 30 times more than the Ghanaians are able to. Okay? If you look at what you can buy with your money, next slide, please. If you look at what you can buy for, say, 100,000, Nigeria should move up the ranking now. In Casablanca, which is the most expensive, you could get less than 63 square meters. In Cairo, you could get almost 246 square meters for your 100,000. In Nigeria, in Lagos, about 200 square meters. With the devaluation of our currency, you can imagine that probably you can get about 300 square meters in Lagos. So that was just to set a context so that you know how critical data is in the whole realm of real estate and housing. And if you're to drive affordability without data, you're nowhere. You've not even started because you can't measure. You can't really manage what you're not able to measure until you're able to identify where you are. In the spectrum, you can't manage, you can't really control it. I'm going to skip a lot of the technology side of it because I know there's some other the tech guys here who would talk more about that. Next slide, please. But technology is pervading every aspect of the housing market. Next slide, please. So from construction management to even the maintenance of housing, we're bringing in technology. Let's go to the next slide. I would want to start on the bit about the types of data. Next slide, please. Yeah. The management of data has so many important facets that we rarely even think about. You need to have governance around the data. And not just everyone throws out data. And it reminds me of some things I read a long time ago where it says the governments are very fond of statistics. They add them, they multiply them, they subtract, and they divide them by their square root. But at the end of the day, they rely on the village idiot who puts down whatever he likes. So we must not create data in that way. We need to have governance around data. We need to have stewardship around data. We need to have security around data. We need to have big data type management. So if you're creating data lakes, and the guys sitting here understand those very well, if you're creating data lakes, big data, you need to be able to manage them securely. You need to warehouse data. You need the infrastructure to warehouse data, and you need to have the master management and the quality management around data. Skip the next slide. And keep skipping the slides. Here we're just citing some of the institutions that are involved. One of them, I think, Dr. Ibinoba is joining online, Python Housing in Nigeria. The next section is on data agenda for Africa. The Center for Affordable Housing Finance in Africa, CAF, have really set up a structure to allow us to really begin to manage and deliver data of the quality that the global world needs. And they have structured this around the fundamentals for data. They've done the agenda for it, and they've done the universal aspects of it, and they've done the intelligence aspects of those data. So the agenda covers these areas. Next slide, please. Next slide. It covers this area, the landscape itself. It covers the country profiles, the 15 market indicators that they're using. It also covers aspect dealing with the onlining and then having a dashboard that can now give you specific access. It also looks at the collection, the assessment. It looks at the identity. It looks at the integration. It looks at building the capacity to deliver data, and it looks at the credibility of the data itself. So, next slide. When we look at what they've done, they've gone through, next slide, next slide, next slide, please. No, come back one, Yeah. What they've done is actually to look at the entire value chain, and they have defined the different indicators that you can use to capture the data to be able to build those important facets to data that is required. Let's now look at how they think we should be assessing the quality. Next slide. Next slide. The important qualities of data is the relevance to the scenario that you're looking at, whether it's accurate, whether it's representative, whether it comes in timely. And that's so important. The timeliness of data is critical. There's no point giving me data of the 1990s today. They become redundant. I need to literally be able to have data on a real-time basis, maybe even have predictive analytical capability for the data that I have today. Let's just look at a couple of slides that looks at how we can bring in all of these things from a public sector perspective. Next slide, please. From the public sector perspective, our key institutions are the NBS, the Bureau of Statistics, the NPC, the Population Commission, the central bank itself. The NMRC has actually, in my time at NMRC, I delivered this portal, the Housing Market Information System, and within that is the Housing Market Information Portal that forms part of that system. The FMBN, we've been hearing much about what it does. The FHA, we've heard a bit, next slide. FHA, we've heard what it does, and the FHFL, we've heard. Imagine all of these coming together, having data that is accessible, delivered to the market, that you can recover from the tip of your fingers, sitting wherever you are in the world. That would transform our market. So the kind of data producers in our economy, next slide, 2 slides down, please. Yeah. The kind of institutions, we just passed them, are the ones I've cited. And then we look at how this availability of data and the quality fits into the context of what it should be. So quality assessment, next slide. Next slide. From excellent to good to moderate to poor. We see indicators coming from even some of our most respected institutions. And what I did was to try and test one of those, and the indicator, 2 slides further down, please. Let me just make the point. I want to look at the GDP. No disrespect to our much respected institution. These are the GDP from the World Economic Research, extracted just a few days ago. This GDP is not only gives you the GDP of the country, it gives you the ranking and the quality of the data from that country. You can see on this sheet, Nigeria makes the top 20 economies, but look, all of a sudden, everybody is in the A, B, and worst case C ranking, where A is good, is as good as it gets, B is good, C is used with caution, D is poor, and E is extremely poor. You can see on this sheet, there's only one country that has extremely poor quality data. It should be something to make us hide our faces in shame. We cannot drive policy with data that is not reliable. The world sees the quality of our data, and this is for the most respected source of our data. I didn't pick anything that can be questioned. I picked the GDP, and the source is our most respected institution. Okay. Poorest quality that you can ever imagine. Next slide. Next slides. Skip these ones about GDP. I've made the point. So digitization. What's the whole point of this digitization? You don't just digitize for the sake of it. You digitize so that you can use it in a more efficient manner. If we keep keeping our records in piles of hard sheet, hard paper, we would never achieve that ability to deliver the data real time into the marketplace. So the imperatives for digitization is fast delivery, is to remove the redundancies, is to really ensure that the data is of the best quality and is robust for the purposes that is required. And to my mind, blockchain is the only solution that I can think of that delivers that. And in order to really determine how we can do that effectively, I believe a starting point is on the most vexing issue. If we listen to Mr. Oguniron's presentation in the morning, land was a starting point. Land is critical because land and land assembly is where your title, the root of your title comes from there. And so the proposal in this presentation is that you first apply the blockchain technology to the land registry. And you can start that by even having it first as a first tier where you just maintain your original land registry and simply insert in between that a portal that serves as a shadow, is a shadow, not your real registry. Then the next, I'm not going to go through the slides anymore. Let me just talk through it because I don't have the time to do that. And I've done what I think I needed to do. When you get the slides, you can read through it. What you do is you either go one route or you go the other. You can choose to maintain your existing registry, and simply add that layer of technology that is protected for you. It brings in that element of security in it. It doesn't mean that you should be complacent about security. We know at the end of the day, systems can be hacked. So you build the best type of security around it. So you're moving from that old hard paper to digitized records of your land registry. So from there, you can completely eliminate the hard copies and tokenize your registry. So your titles now become in the form of tokens. I've put that, it's all in the presentation. It takes the form of a token. So instead of you having paper titles, you're now issued an electronic title. I have a lady from Rwanda who's in the midst somewhere, and if she tells you it takes 48 hours to get a title in her country, I'm not talking about the UK or anywhere else. I would have her just say it herself so that you don't think Charles Nyangete is just making this up. In her country, they get title in 48 hours. And she can give the specifics of it. We can then skip and go to, because I know I've literally used up all my time, we can skip, because I've told you how you can do that and the benefits of it. We can skip and go to how you can really fund this much talked about issues in the housing sector. If you go to the point where I have a table towards the end of the presentation, there's a table where I just have a spreadsheet pulled into the presentation. I'll just talk my way through that spreadsheet for about a minute or so. Keep going, please. It's towards the end. I told you it's 100+ slides. You thought I was kidding. Keep going. This is a Dubai system. Keep going, please. Keep going. Keep going. You go past this point. Keep going. Please keep going. What I have done in that slide, here we are. What I've done here is to show that even today, we have a source that would quadruple what is invested in housing without much. What it requires is the will, the commitment, and the dedication to do so. Look at that. FMB and the size of his portfolio, 140 billion. FHFL, just under 100 billion. NMRC, 24 billion. FHA, I didn't get the stats for it. PENCOM, assets, 219 billion. Translates to just 1.3% of the size of our pension. Our pension fund is about 16.7 trillion, 16.76 trillion naira. In the established world, take the UK as an example. Their pension scheme is about 1.75 trillion euros, is in euro, not pound, euros. But their investment from their pension into the real estate sector is nearly 6%, okay? 5.96%. If we were to move from our 1.3% to 5%, we would deliver an additional nearly 1 trillion naira into the, we'll deliver 838 billion naira into the housing market by simply moving to that. That's an acceptable level globally. Note, even at that level, just a few days ago, exactly 2 weeks ago, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, said that they're planning to increase the pension fund contribution to affordable housing, specifically affordable housing, even from this level. That's a country that is more developed than we are, that is already committing 4 times more than we are to our pension, to our housing sector, wanting to add more to affordable housing. Secondly, on a voluntary basis, just a few days ago, a company known as Mansion House Compact has voluntarily committed 5% of its pension to affordable housing. They're also mandating the commitment to SMEs from the pensions. So there are things we can do, if you want to call them low-hanging fruit, that we're not doing. Why are we not doing it? What it requires is what it takes to do it. Can you move one more slide as I conclude? Can you move one more slide? Yeah. Just come back one more, please. Let me just make the point before I conclude. Sorry. One more slide down, please. Yeah. I think what we need to do is to go where we can make the biggest impact. And Mr. Guniro in the morning alluded to that. You know, if we're going to make the biggest impact, and Adewale, we must target the informal settlements. You don't have to go and build in the most expensive areas. The informal settlements allows you to deliver more affordable houses in larger numbers, that with the support of the state, of course. We need to address the first-time homeowners. You know, when I started my career in the UK, I had a system that was called MIRAS, Mortgage Interest Relief at Source, as part of what we benefited from. So all my mortgage payments were tax deductible. So my taxes were net of that. I think I've said this many times over, but it looks like it's finally being adopted, and I hope it will be. And the next is the bottom 40%. Social housing is the way to deliver affordable housing in the context of Nigeria. And finally, I think I started with that 16 trillion challenge. In the context of Nigeria, 20 plus million deficit, as opposed to 440 million globally. All I can say is that we have the avenue for raising funds I've just shown you, but I believe what is required is that will, that desire, and that commitment to do the right thing. Thank you.
Please, a better round of applause for that very excellent presentation from our very erudite professor. Thank you very much, sir. Like we mentioned before, please have your comments and questions down, and immediately afterwards, when they've all done, we will take them at this point in time. Now we'll move to the online presentation, and we'll be going to digital transformation and large-scale delivery of affordable housing by Mr. Tony Olang, the head of Data Center Digitization and Archival Services, CPF Kenya. He's virtual. Are we ready for him now?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'll request 1 minute to settle down. 1 moment.
All right, Mr. Tony Olang. I also would like to recognize the presence of the Managing Director, EPCA Development, Karine Kamanzi. Karine Kamanzi. Where's from Rwanda. Karine Kamanzi from Rwanda. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh, she's over there. You didn't stand up so we could see you. Thank you very much, Karine. It's a pleasure. Right, Mr. Tony? So I'm just going to put out my question for later, because I've been listening to everybody every morning, and we seem to be running around one particular mountain, which is how can we remove politics to a considerable degree from government? I don't think we can completely eliminate it, but we should be able to find a way to reduce it significantly in governance, especially in critical areas, to the degree that this can function, because a lot of the time the political will is swallowed, the will to do is swallowed up by political considerations and political exigencies. And at the end of the day, both the people and the government, don't end up very well. So I think it's very important next time, maybe we need to have a few politicians invited at the next summit so we can address some of these issues. We know you have to do your politics, but we also know that the people, without the nation, there is no politics. And so there has to be some form of consideration that balances this out quite excellently. All right, Mr. Tony, we'll be handing over to you now. Can we have his slides at least?
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you once again. I think I can make the presentation from my end. Am I able to share? Yes, yes.
Yes, you are able to share.
Yes. Are you able to see my screen?
I believe so. Yes, we can see.
Excellent. So, Professor just made an excellent introduction to this conversation, and most of us are still operating analog days. We're still dealing with hard paper applications, and this then makes decision-making extremely difficult. I think for housekeeping purposes, Mr. Moderator, how much time do I have? Housekeeping, how much time will you give me today?
All right, you have 8 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well.
Thank you. So I'll be quick about it.
Thank you.
So a little history about the organization I work for. This is the CPF group, and within our group, we have various subsidiaries. The history goes back to 1929 when the Lab Trust pension scheme was set up. This was to cater for the local authority staff at the time. And without going through the details of our corporate framework, you can now see the various subsidiaries that have come through following the growth and innovative approach to how we do what we do. Towards the end of my presentation, I'll also give you a run through of some of the property and housing projects that we are working on. And this is just a very high level introduction on what a document management system should be able to do for you. So you should be able to capture your documents, be able to isolate your metadata, index this data, store it, retrieve, search, be able to move work documents through processes. These are the approval processes that you'll have in your various stages of ensuring that you can provide housing and be able to provide the financing for that housing. Security, your documents will be more secure. You'll be able to grant access permissions, and you'll also be able to have audit trails. Something very interesting that is happening in our market is that registries are burning down. So in our case, you probably have documents that are coming back from 1900 or even before 1900. and those documents are very brittle. So once we've been able to digitize those documents, you give the document a longer life. We are also able to integrate your document management system with all your other operating systems. And what is ideal here is we are able to compress the images of those files so that they are occupying a much smaller space on the disk. And I understand that we are pressed for time, so I won't go through too much of the technical stuff. But you can see here somebody looking for a document. And I heard about the digitization of the land registries in Rwanda. I can imagine now that they don't have to deal with this kind of thing. They've all gone digital. So here is one project that we delivered on in Nairobi. We digitized the national identity cards, application forms, 100 million records for the government. And that experience then led us to appreciate that even after the documents have been digitized, you need to archive them. So my current mandate is to build a 2,000 to 3,000 rack data center so that we are able to digitize and store both the hard copy and the digitized copy of the records, on top of being able to support the processes of our various customers. So this is a picture of how we store the archived documents. We have the racking system so that the documents are not placed on the floor, and they are stored safe, and they are stored very well. So we are the first in the market to be a gazetted provider of archival services, and that means a lot. I heard Professor talking about being able to make decisions and being able to make timely decisions. Part of that stems from the quality and reliability and availability of your data. So as I had mentioned earlier, part of my mandate will be to build a 2,000 to 3,000 rack data center. And one of the key challenges that we are facing in the region is the cost of power, availability of water, and the general availability of the skill sets that we need to run these facilities. So the higher your cost of power, the higher your cost of running a data center and being able to provide efficient delivery on your data center service. This slide tells us a little bit about data center grading and how they are tiered, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4, courtesy of the availability or uptime of your services. So if we are talking about a financial service provider, you will definitely be talking about tier 3 plus or tier 4 to ensure that when your customer is using his mobile banking application, he's definitely going to go through and be able to enjoy the services that you're delivering. So this is what we are looking at delivering in form of a picture. I won't dwell too much on some of the details that come through with that. Of course, we've talked about security, physical security, security of the devices, and then security of your data are key. We are then able to provide hands and eyes once we've been able to put up this data center. We are currently at early stage in being able to do that. And whatever it is we are presenting here, you will have a mirror image of your physical original record to whatever has been digitized, and then is being made available to you on your EDMS, on your ERP, or whatever application it is that you're running to support your customer. And your customer can then be able to self-serve. So if they want to inquire on their mortgage balances, if they want to make inquiries on additional and available services that you're able to give them, you're then able to do that in real time. I had Professor talking about real time, which is very important because the modern customer does not want to know what his balance was last year. He wants to know what his available balance or his mortgage balance is today, so that he's then able to engage with the bank appropriately. And ultimately, we are talking about securing housing. So part of what we do is within the group, I had mentioned earlier that we have various subsidiaries. And my previous mandate, I was in charge of the IT subsidiary. And one of the services that we are providing is utilities project management. So from when you're conceptualizing your project, you can see on the slide that I'm displaying, all the way to completion of the project, and ultimately when you're then now dealing with a customer who's occupying his new house, you're going to have an opportunity for follow through and even be proactive when you're dealing with your customer. So one of the buildings that we are currently working on is called the G48 Ugatuzi Tower. This is a 50-story building, which is at early stage in Nairobi. The other project we are talking about is apartment blocks, which will then have piped LPG gas to ensure that customers are not carrying gas bottles in and out for better security, better safety. Items like jogging tracks, of course, the amenities and quality of life are all being put together. There's also a project where we are working with Homa Bay County to assist them to develop their headquarters for the governor's office. We are also looking at Nyamira County to assist them build an industrial park. We are also looking at 340 residential units in Eldoret. These are mixed use. And other projects that we have in the pipeline include Kakamega County, Taita Taveta County, Machakos County, Kajiado County. These are the participating counties in the pension scheme. So this is a very nice way of the pension scheme saying we are willing to give back and support the growth within those counties. And all these projects we are looking at will be financed through a mix of equity and mixed opportunities for financing to support that. Part of our team, we have Madam Ruth, who assists with relationship. We have Victor, who assists us with archival work. We have Betty, who's in business development. James, who's a very experienced gentleman in managing records. He's actually been with the organization for 26 years. And then you have myself. My background is in technology. So I'm bringing a blend between the old and the new. And in my free time, I'm writing. I'm a published author. I've now written 9 books. 5 of them are already published. I've just presented 2 on the screen. If you'd like to see some more, you can visit www.tonyolang.com. And some of our clients that are enjoying the benefits that we've been able to provide them in the market. And we would be very happy and willing to come to Lagos, hold hands with the various circles, and then bring them up to speed and assist you with the process of moving from paper-based processes to digital processes. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure being with you this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tony Olang, Head of Data Center. We appreciate that presentation. And we'll be moving on to the next virtual presentation. Is Dr. Roland available now? And so we'll be moving on to leveraging fintech and proptech for affordable housing. Dr. Roland Igbinoba, founder, Poison Housing Company, and President PropTech Nigeria Limited. He has 8 minutes, and that will be the next virtual presentation. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Roland.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can everyone?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Give me a second. Give me a second.
A second just expired.
Okay, just so that, I'm quite in a noisy place, but just so that everyone can see my face and see who Roland is, I'll just show the picture. I'll just show my picture, and then I'll take off the video and then continue with my presentation.
Okay.
So I'm going to, a big thank you to NAHFIS for having me, for giving me the opportunity to be able to make this presentation on leveraging fintech and proptech for affordable housing. So I don't know if I have rights to be able to share. Can I share?
Yes, I believe you can.
Okay, so I'm trying to share my, just let me know when my screen is up.
Your screen.
Please, do you have my screen?
Mm-hmm. We're waiting for your, yes, we have your slides now.
Okay, we have the slide, right? Okay, great. Okay, quickly, I'm going to have about 4 discussion points. I'm going to quickly look at changing PropTech landscape and its impact on affordable housing. And then I'll quickly look at what PropTech means for ESG, and then go to the meat of the conversation, which is what PropTech is doing to address housing affordability. And then if there is time, I can look at how new consumption patterns is changing the digital landscape. We are stuck with COVID, and I think we know that, because people still work remotely. There are a lot of jobs who never thought that they could work remotely who are now doing, who are now allowing their staff to do remotely. And when you are stuck with something like this, it just tells you that you are at a strategic inflection point. And a strategic inflection point is either you innovate or die. And having said that, really, is to then look at how fintech and proptech are playing. Now, on my slide, I pulled this image out of Google, which basically is showing the relationship between proptech and fintech. And if you see where the Venn diagram is intersecting, you find real estate fintech. So a few people call it real estate fintech. Some people call it proptech. Some people say it's an integration between fintech and proptech. But what does all of this mean, really? Now, it's about reimagining the entire real estate landscape, okay? And this is one slide that I love very much. This will be like the 5th or 6th year I continue to use this slide, because it just explains what PropTech is. And so if you look at this value chain, which was created by the Center for Affordable Housing Finance a while ago, and we have updated it at the Property Technology Association, you see that in the value chain, right from access to land up until operations and maintenance of the property, technology has a role to play. So whether you are trying to do planning and building regulations, in which case you'll be talking about blockchain technology, or even tokenization, or whether it's infrastructure services, or is in construction and building materials, up until the end user finance, when people begin to look at mortgages, technology has a role. And so everywhere in this value chain that technology plays a role, that's what we call PropTech. And so there are several PropTech startups in the country today. Now, to give a very basic example of what PropTech is, in the 2000s, if you have a property and you wanted a buyer, or a landlord wanted to get a tenant, you'll be looking for classified adverts, okay? But run to 2000, post 2018, and in marketplace, you're looking at digitization of the entire ecosystem. So again, where technology plays a role in any part of this value chain is what we are saying is PropTech. And the value drivers are basically the development of the internet, big data, emergence of new technologies, rising mobile phone use, and a very interesting part right now is the customer experience. Customers want, they want experience that leave them very happy, and this is where technology really comes into play. Now before I delve into how technology is helping with housing affordability, how PropTech and FinTech is helping with housing affordability, it will be nice to look at the mapping of PropTech landscape in Africa. So you'll see that in Nigeria alone, you have about 95 active PropTech startups. This is out of the 160 PropTech startups in the country. About 95 of these startups, meaning they are active, they are generating some level of revenue, albeit they may not be making profit yet, but these are very active PropTech startups. And so if you look at Ghana, Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, across the continent, all right? So you have over 220 prop tech startups in the continent, serving about 0.18 per million people. Now, how is PropTech and FinTech helping the ESG goals? Now, we've looked at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, the focus is always on Goal 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. But I dare say that with PropTech, we've seen that PropTech, cuts across the 17 SDGs. So, for example, if you know Lagos or if you've been in Lagos, you can spend 6 hours in traffic to and fro work. All right. But what prop tech startups have been able to do is to create or dimension apartments in rooms and on a monthly basis so that people who couldn't live near their work are now living close to work. So, for example, if I used to travel 3 hours from Egbeda to Victoria Island for work, and now I can afford a room and I can pay on a monthly basis, it means that all of the carbon emissions that happens when I drive, or when I'm a passenger from Egbeda to Lagos, is definitely reduced. And so that's not just sustainable cities and communities. That's talking about climate change. That's talking about climate action. That's talking about good health and well-being. Because if I don't have to stay traffic for 6 hours, it means that I'm having good health and well-being. I'm really sorry, like I said, I'm in a noisy background, but I hope everyone can hear me. Another interesting thing is that it's circular economy. Okay. Now, what PropTech is doing is, for example, there've been a lot of unoccupied buildings in highbrow areas in Maitama, in Ikoyi, in Lagos, where you find that an apartment are staying 6-7 years without usage. But what a lot of these PropTech platforms have been doing is using PropTech to create co-living, okay, and shared living, such that these apartments that were once not used, because of the price point on it, can now be shared amongst the people who are using the apartment. And we think that that's circular economy. What I mean,
Dr. Roland, we lost you. Hello. We just have about 2 minutes or so more. What's the situation? His network is down. So while we're trying to wait for him to get back, please get your questions ready so that we will ask the questions and take the question sessions before we go. Because of those who are online, we don't want to keep them too long before we go into the success stories and then we round up for the day. He's back. Hello, doctor. Can you hear us? Hello? Okay, I think we have a small technological issue there. The networks are a bit down. So what we will do, please, can we get ready for the question session? Can we get the microphones ready and just get ready for that? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to skip the question session and we're just going to go straight to the success stories. And so the first one we're going to be taking under PropTech FinTech Startups is the success story of Split in rental accommodation by King Tola, co-founder and CEO Split. Shall we welcome him with a round of applause as he comes to make the presentation on success stories. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tola and I'm the co-founder and CEO at Split. To give you a very, very nuanced or better explanation of what we do at Split, we're a financial services solution that has built an end-to-end solution from property management to marketplace to rent financing, all in one space for the renting economy, mostly for residential renting. We started out in 2018, just looking at the problem of renting in Nigeria. Everywhere that's developed in the world, tenants pay their rent monthly. So they pay their rent as they earn. Here in Nigeria, we pay our rent 1-2 years in advance. And at the time, my co-founder and I thought that was very, very absurd. Because where am I going to find 2 years rent, if I don't have rich parents to help me pay this rent? So we decided to change that. But in stepping into that challenge and changing that landscape, we started to find out why this existed in the first place, and all the other problems that occurred around KYC, around rent collection, around agency, around property management. And so even though we started out building out a marketplace where people can pay their rent or rent homes and pay monthly, we ended up building a full-scale end-to-end property management solution, also infusing rent financing into it this year. But today my presentation is about to educate you on the tech landscape and how we have gotten here today. Is my presentation on? All right, thank you. So I want to just educate us a little bit about the Nigerian startup scene. In the early 2000s, we had the first wave of internet companies, startups they are called, InterSwitch, eTransact, Unified Payments, Remita. Some of us will know some of these companies because we probably used them to pay school fees online or pay our bills back in the day. So I call them the first players, the FinTech 1.0. In every economy, the tech ecosystem always starts with FinTech because the first problem that people try to solve around or digitize is money, right? Cash is a movable asset. It's one of the biggest assets in the world, right? Everybody wants to access it. Everybody wants to be able to use it to pay for something. Everybody wants to borrow it. Something around cash is in the fundamental of our lives and our lifestyles. So startups enter an economy and try to digitize or create internet companies around that. So our first set of startups were fintech players. They're always the first people to enter a market to digitize, right? But then comes our fintech 2.0. These sets of startups started in 2015, 2014, right? When venture capital started to make a play on the continent. So speaking about our first set of players, they were either part government funded and part private funded, or private equity funded, or banks funded, right? But these players introduced the idea of venture capital into the markets. Venture capital is essentially the riskiest asset class that exists to invest in high growth startups. Now, at this stage, there was an evolution because two things happened. By 2020, 4 or 5 years after these startups were founded, we saw one of them become a $1 billion company and the other one sell to a bigger player for $200 million. Now, in every economy, the next thing that comes after cash is property. What is that physical asset that can be backed by cash that is secure? So let's go traditional for a bit. In the banking sector, when you have retail lending, retail banking, commercial banking, the next thing that comes after it is mortgage banking, right? Same situation here in tech. When we saw the likes of Stripe hit 1 billion, saw the likes of PayPal across the globe, the next wave of companies were Zoopla, Airbnb, just digitizing things around real estate. But there's a difference. So this is essentially diversification of the Nigerian startup scene. You see that prop tech, which is just a funny name for internet companies that are innovating around property and real estate, only accounts for 7% of that, of the tech space in Nigeria, right? For such support that will be given to the largest asset class across the world, right? We're only accounting for 7%. But I'll explain why. The reason for that is real estate is an immovable asset, right? And it's the oldest asset class in the world. So innovation is usually much slower, right? Let's take a use case from Airbnb. Airbnb started out trying to innovate around hotels. They didn't mean that hotels were going to die, no. It just meant that a different generation would have a different way of renting a home in a new place or in a new destination, right? And to do that, it started out very, very, very slowly. So they started out on their couch, renting out their couch, and sort of cutting out cornflakes and cereal boxes to entertain, sort of markets to their customers. But a switch turned, right? Adoption started to happen. And then both homeowners, people that wanted to rent out a spare bedroom in their house, to people that wanted to also rent out that couch, started to adopt the technology that Airbnb had built. Subsequently, years after, people started to invest in real estate just to put it on Airbnb, to the point that Airbnb now becomes a noun, right? It becomes something that people feel is tangible, right? It's part of the real estate asset class. So you're either buying real estate to live in, either buying it to rent out traditionally, or either buying it to put it on Airbnb, right? That's where the world has gone. And I think the same would happen in our economy. Today, in 2016, Paystack brought about 10% of Nigeria's GDP to the internet by 2020, right? So most of payments that were going across the country were going through Paystack or Flutterwave. I do say that if we flip it into the real estate markets, most of the transactions that will be happening in rental, most of the construction materials transactions, most of the buying transactions will be happening online in the next 5 years, right? It's a much slower approach because, again, as I said, the asset is immovable, right? So we have to innovate around that immovable asset. One, we have to innovate around the fact that it's the oldest asset class that exists. So change is much slower than fintech, right? Much slower than cash. Digitizing cash is something everybody wants to do. How do I digitize my agency process when there are set agency processes that have existed for the past 50 years? But we're getting there. But we have prop techs in Nigeria that are innovating around all these five subsets. Construction and design, property and community management, which is where we sit at. So we sit in between flexible living and property and community management, as well as investment and financing. So on our own side, we have a product called Rent Now, Pay Later. Essentially, tenants can borrow to pay their rent. We advance their rent to the landlord, and then they get to pay their rent monthly by making a 15% contribution, of course. And data analytics. There's an interesting company for construction companies, real estate agents in the room today. You should check out. They're called Estate Intel. Whatever data that you want on the African housing or real estate markets, they will get it to you quickly and as detailed as possible. Essentially, I'm talking here about how venture capital funds us, funds the tech ecosystem. At the pre-seed stage, you have angel investors like yourselves who will say, hey, I'm in real estate, I want to back this company so that they can get to the seed stage where the venture capital is coming. Unfortunately for us, in that exit I mentioned about where Paystack sold to Stripe for 200 million, more than 70% of that venture capital or that return on capital went to foreign venture capitalists. It would have been a beautiful story if at the early stage, at pre-seed stage, banks or bankers or people in the financial institutions had backed Paystack early, right? So that at when that exit is happening, most of that capital or most of that return on capital is retained locally. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Unfortunately, again, over 80%, over 85% of venture capital that's being deployed into Nigeria or into the African ecosystem is coming from the US. That needs to change, especially at the pre-seed stage, where high net worth individuals and players in those markets, so it being real estate, fintech, health tech, whatever, can contribute at the early stages. So at Series A, Series B, or exit stages, we're retaining all of that capital and funneling it into new companies. There are a bunch of accelerators and incubators that support the tech ecosystem at the early stage. But this is how the acceleration has happened. PropTech is at about 42.9%. So we're doing quite okay here. These are the things we need. Funding. I can't say this much. I can't say this too many times. Every startup that's starting out needs that first believer that will help them fund, help them validate their idea. Talent. We all know that our people are leaving the shores of Nigeria now so talent is becoming more expensive. Regulation. Well, with PropTech, I think we're having it much easier because around real estate, there's been proper and detailed regulation. And because in our own case, we work directly with real estate agents, property managers, we follow the regulatory landscape that they work with. But regulation is something we're willing to work with governments about. Data, as I mentioned, and infrastructure. For us, infrastructure is very, very important, especially physical infrastructure. The better the houses we have on our platform to rent out, the better houses our tenants are able to borrow to pay for. I think the whole ecosystem from landlords, agents, property management, and tenants will be happy if we had better infrastructure. I think that we have an exciting future in the PropTech space and tech space in Nigeria in general. But I think we're getting to that point that in our own PropTech space where PropTechs now need to start partnering with both government and the traditional players like yourselves. It's important that you start to understand what we're building and how it makes your lives easier, makes your business earn money faster, and it just ensures ease of doing business across board with adopting these technologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very insightful and practical presentation. We'll go to another success story again, and this time we'll be unlocking digital banking for housing finance Vank. Shall we welcome to the podium Mr. Daniel Essien, co-founder, CEO of Vank.
Thank you very much. So he was mispronouncing my company name. It's Vank. So Vank is a play on the word. Okay, virtual bank, right? So do I have my slides up? All right, so it's not so easy speaking about digital banking and real estate at the end when very many knowledgeable people have already spoken on the subject. So I'll just skip many of the slides because much of it has been covered in by previous speakers. Do I have my slides up, please? Okay, thank you very much. All right, so unlocking digital banking for affordable housing, notes from the front lines. We already have heard about this, the issues, the background about the housing deficit. So for us, we broke down the different causes. So the first thing is we've had rapid population growth. Then on the economic front, there is a low credit allocation to real estate, poverty, inflation, and then the land tenure, which many people have already spoken about. Then technological, and this is where we come in. So whichever the source of the issues are, the effect is that there's a big housing shortage, and Bank is trying to solve that. Okay, so how can we solve it? All these issues, are there opportunities for technology to be applied to solving them? So we take one of the issues. So there's only 2.5% of private sector credit went to real estate last year, right? So is there opportunity to mobilize credit outside the conventional housing finance ecosystem? And on the other issue, houses being supplied are not affordable. So why is that? Why are houses being supplied not being affordable? Is it possible to apply predictive methods to tell where the next population growth is headed, where the areas of population growth is, and then build projects there long before that happens? Okay, so data-driven real estate, tech-driven real estate models. So we have just a rundown of, people already made comments about the different kinds of prop techs. So this is just a recap. So there are different types. Some are just listing sites. In Nigeria, you have private property. Globally, you have Zillow. There are short-let models, Airbnb, and there's a shortletrentals.com. Rentec. So Rentec, I think that's where Split belongs. And then there is Esusu. Esusu actually is doing something very interesting with data. So Esusu is a US company that basically reports rent payment. So if you pay your rent on time, Esusu reports that to the credit rating agencies. That becomes part of your credit score. So a way for you to benefit from rent payment. That establishes a pattern, and it's easier for you to get maybe loans in the future. And now there are embedded real estate. The idea of digital banking that we envisage, and which Bank was already positioning to build, will involve embedded real estate. So that basically means that it's the use of financial tools, right? So you use financial tools or services such as lending in other contexts. So maybe you are not, we're a wallet, right? But then we offer real estate services over the wallet. So we offer lending, because Bank enables users to buy property that we have pre-vetted and then unlock value from that property down the road. Maybe they want to borrow against it. They can still sell within the wallet as well, if they choose. Or maybe they don't want to sell. They can simply leave, continue to monitor the value of the wallet. We seek to drive value through ecosystem integration, enabling end-to-end journey for property ownership. So from search to selection to buying. So we take the weight of the burden of maybe first-time property acquirers. And yeah, so this is it. This is how we do it. We are basically a quasi digital bank because we offer financial services. Basically, we empower people to take a loan against their property holding within Bank Wallet. And there's price transparency with Bank. So that means you can basically know what your property is worth. You can, there's lower cost because obviously we use analytics to decide if a property is already highly valued or if it's the right price before we go on to acquire them. And we use AI, right? At the back end, we use artificial intelligence to provide content for our property listing brochures. We provide we provide the exact long lat information so you can visually visualize your property. So when you buy, you can go on Google Earth and see what it looks like, right? You can go there on Google Map as well. So there's a lot of transparency around that. On top of that, we're building API-enabled value-added services, right? So we envisage a situation where when you have a property on Vank and you want to go into a third-party transaction, Vank can give guarantee to the transaction on the strength of the value of the property that you have got. So this is quasi, and we're doing this just using the corridor we have built. So remember, we don't have access to the government database electronically. So what we have done, we go through the tedious process of physically confirming that the property titles are right, and then enter into an acquisition contract with the developer before we go on to list, right? Imagine what we could do if there was an end-to-end integration with the government system. A lot of time and money will be saved. So that is we think that that we will become the real estate digital bank at the moment that we're able to integrate with government systems. So just a comment on affordability. A lot has been said about that, but in summary, we think that an agenda to unlock digital banking for affordable housing should begin with digitization, right, of real estate. So that's the only way, right? So real estate and associated transactions should be digitized. Without that happening, we're still going to have a very costly and inefficient process. So McKinsey has pointed out the 4 sources for the affordability gap, and we see opportunities in technology integration in reducing these inefficiencies. Okay, so for the digital bank of the future, right? So if we want to have a digital bank that works for everyone, first of all, government record has to be available for people like us, or maybe existing bank to build infrastructure connections and communications with, right? So, but it should have mobile banking features. It should have an innovative financing model, automation, alternative credit scoring, as people have pointed out. And so how will that work? So first, infrastructure, like I've pointed out. Then policy, the right policy needs to be there. Policy harmony between the different institutions of government. I'm a blockchain developer, right? So I'll use one example about policy harmony. We had a situation where the CBN outrightly banned cryptocurrencies in 2021, I think that was it. And while SEC was studying the problem, and SEC, about a year later, has released a framework for cryptocurrency integration in transactions in Nigeria. But the CBN still hasn't approved it. So though we are a blockchain company, we can't build with crypto in mind, right? So we'd like to see policy harmony, then collaboration between stakeholders, government, that's been spoken on. Education, comprehensive education to stakeholders and to users. So yeah, there's the final slide here. The roadmap to success, there should be cross-industry collaboration, scalability and flexibility. So when building the technology, you have to be careful to make sure that you can expand easily when you want to. So you design to scale with growing demands and adaptability. So you have to think about integration with existing technologies like blockchain, and Prof talked about blockchain. So I want to talk about smart contract. Someone was asking, how do we make sure corruption or politics doesn't get it in the way? With the help of blockchain, we can build smart contract into transactions which are programmed by code so that they self-execute. So once the transactions have kick-started, no human being can stop them, right? So that's one use case we can think of. Then standardization of data formats across the real estate industry can support interoperability. All right then. I hope we can work collaboratively, government and everybody involved, financial institutions, technology companies, and all stakeholders to make digital banking work for real estate in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, and thank you for being able to make that presentation within the time constraints that you had. I'm sure when we get the slides, we'll have more time to go through them and get some of the data that we were not able to get at this point in time. I'm told that Dr. Ronald Igbinogba is back online, and he just has 2 minutes to round up that presentation. Just exactly 2 minutes. We're really out of time. Just 2 minutes, and then we round up that presentation. So I will just stand. I won't go back to sit down since it's just 2 minutes. All right, Dr. Ronald, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sorry, my connection went off. I think I'll just use the next 2 minutes to discuss this slide. So basically, how does PropTech helps affordability? Like I mentioned during the beginning of my setting the background, today, while PropTech, we have not scaled 3D construction of houses to enable building of houses with 3D, but PropTech has helped affordability because they've been able to create monthly rentals. I mean, Tola just finished talking about what they're doing at Split, you know, and you have a few of those PropTech startups who are helping affordability. So I'm looking at housing, not by building new housing, but access to housing, which is critical to the kind of housing stock that is required in the country today. So now you have monthly rentals. There is a co-living and sharing economy. People who don't even know each other can live together in rooms. And then you have property data. And then now customers are being also able to be vetted. So this is how we are looking at affordability when it comes to PropTech. When we start to do 3D construction and modular construction, then we might be able to start to talk about PropTech in building construction. But right now, I think the areas of monthly rentals and co-living and sharing economy is a major area where PropTech startups are helping. We understand there are new consumption patterns, you know, and we have a demographics of young people. As at 2017, this demographic was over 120 million people. So PropTech is definitely the way to go if we want to sustain the industry business. So especially as a roundup, so what? The fact is that we are asking for adopters. You know, we are asking for early adopters in the room. We have a lot of traditional real estate players sitting right now in this conference who still think that PropTech is not the way to go. But you know, if we want to develop the market, we need people who come in as early adopters. We have a lot of innovators already. And that's basically my point of talking about PropTech. And I'm glad that Split has also had a chance to talk about what they are doing and how they are helping the market. So what should all the big boys in the room be doing? All of the big real estate developers, all of the government agencies, all of the FMBNs of this world, the NMROCs, the family owned, what should they be doing? They should do three things. They should either create PropTech startups or start to incubate, accelerate, or seed fund PropTech startups. And where they can't do any of these, they should try and collaborate. It is very critical that the market gets to that point. And I think on that note, I'll just I'll wrap up my presentation. Okay, just one last thing. Just in case you think that this is still not the way to go, compare Hilton. I mean, I think Tola also spoke about Airbnb. Compare Hilton, founded 1919, versus Airbnb today. You know, you are talking about brick and mortar versus technology. You see, in 93 years, Hilton has built about over 600,000 rooms in 88 countries. But in less than say 10 years, Airbnb have over 650,000 rooms in 192 countries. So it just tells you the role that technology can play in the real estate sector. I think on that note, thank you for the opportunity to be able to wrap up this presentation.
Thank you
Reward,
very
I
much.
hope I'm good with your timing.
Yes, you are good. You're good. Thank you, Dr. Roland. It's a pleasure. Thank you for being able to come back and round that up. It was necessary to do so. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to the final success story for the evening. We'll be talking about housing investment in gold, the case of Dukia Gold. Shall we welcome to the podium Tunde Fagbeme, Chairman, Dukia Gold.
First, how many of us have a gold asset, apart from the women here? Rings, trinkets, how many people? Just let me see by show of hand. Great. So if you don't have a ring, it's okay. Do you have a wristwatch that is gold? Do you have a bar of gold? Okay, how many people have a bank account? How many people have a savings account? How many people have a fixed deposit account? How many people have a stock account? How many people have a gold account? If you don't have a gold account, you ought not to be in this room. The reason is simple. The only reason why you come to this world is to build wealth. And the only reason why you are here, apart from building wealth, is to hand over that wealth to the next generation. If you cannot come to add value, then you're just, at best, a parasite. The story I'm about to tell you is a story that all of us are here for. We are all here to tell just one story. How much did we leave behind? Every religion left something behind. The most important thing they left behind was an altar. Chances are that altar is covered in a precious metal, namely what? Gold. If you truly had a wife, a girlfriend, and you wanted to spoil her a little, the only thing you give to that lady is what? A lot of ornament, basically gold. Therefore, if you are sure you want to build or own a house, please start just with one thing. Start with gold. Make sure that you can have a lot of cash in gold so that when you start to try to acquire your property, whatever happens, that property will be completed. So I'm going to just spend 5 minutes basically trying to show you why gold is critical. But because also it's Christmas, I think it's nice that Dukia Gold sends you a little Christmas present very early in the day. If you have a mobile phone, just take it out and let's try and see if we can get you some gold and I can then gift you some gold. Go on this little webpage, which is www.dukiapreciousmetals.co. dukiapreciousmetals.co. This little one here. Yeah. If you open it, I tell you the time now, technically it's 5 o'clock. If you register before 5:30, if you buy gold, any quantity, I would make sure that they top it up with the 10% of the quantity that you buy. Hopefully, that should give you enough to celebrate Christmas. I'll be here next year, by the grace of God, and I'll ask you if you kept that gold or you bought more, and you'll see what kind of interesting appreciation you'd have had on many things that are whatever. So again, just use this, register and make sure it works. Who am I? I'm Tunde Fagbeme. I'm supposed to be chairman of Dukia Gold. What do? We're here because we want to talk to Nigeria on how to make affordable housing work. And I must thank my brother, my up-IC, like they say, for inviting us. We are talking to you about how to invest in gold because gold, like houses, preserve value and wealth, and they're supposed to complement each other. The only challenge is, which one should you do first? Oftentimes, someone gets 100 million and wants to buy a house. He also wants to pay for that house instrumentally. He makes a mistake, pays 30%, keeps 70 million. If you keep your money in cash, by the time the transaction is ended, you'll be a debtor. If I were you, and I know that you should know, what you must do immediately is pay 30 million, go immediately and go and buy gold with the remaining 70 million, Only sell the quantity of gold you need to pay for the next installment. Keep everything else in gold until you finish your house. You'd have done the right thing because the two of them do just one thing. They preserve wealth, they protect you against inflation, and they make sure that it works. I'll show you how it works anyway, so that it's not going to be whatever. We'll talk to you about a solution that helps you to do affordable housing. I am not an investment advisor, even though I'm a chartered accountant. That's irrelevant. I'm also not supposed to be your financial advisor, so please, whatever I say, check it out to your investment advisor. There's a good banker there, and he'll be able to help you use that. But know that what I'm telling you is a fact. It's been fact-checked. And it's simple. Dukia Gold started many years ago, 7, 8 years ago. We're actually a product of the ERGP program of the federal government of Nigeria. We went through it. We became very successful. We were then granted a fairly difficult license. So we are a printing and minting company. We print bullion metals. Basically, I don't look like gold, but honestly, I see quite a few every day. It's a very useless metal, but it's a very, very useful metal, especially in the finance industry. Again, I'll show you. We operate in the entire value chain today. We own mines, therefore we bring raw materials out of the ground. We send it through the refinery. It comes out as a precious metal. What we therefore sell are not raw gold or what I call gold doré. We actually sell bullion investment-grade precious metals. We do that on 2 platforms. We do that to the wholesale guys, especially the big bank boys. Sometimes they don't catch up on time, but when they do, they really come big. And we also do a retail part of it. The most important part for me is the retail part, and that's the one I beg you all to get involved in. We sell gold as low as 1 gram, but we allow you to buy gold at least of 5,000 naira at every instance so that you can actually pay for your gold instrumentally, the same old way that everybody does it. I did my youth corps in Maiduguri, so I can tell you a fact. I have never seen a Kanuri who kept cash. He either kept it in his cow or kept it in his gold. And therefore, if you also meet any successful culture around here, they say to you, Ashotuba dara ni mara fomomi. But Olonjeka fi dukia da dale fomowa. Again, it's simple. If you're going to leave anything for your kid, please make sure it's a good dukia. It's a property, it's a wealth that you can transfer. Again, we do wholesale, we do retail, but that's not the essence of today. We will be talking to you because at the end of the day, everybody has a challenge. What's the challenge? Everyone wants a house, whether it's 50 million, 10 million, or 20 million. You only own what you can afford. And sometimes you must stretch so that you can say, yes, you batted a little higher than your grade, and if you achieve it, that's what makes you work. Therefore, we know that you've got to be innovative, you've got to address your challenges, but the greatest challenge that I see is simple. There's a cacophony of problems in a very traditional industry. It's used to brick and mortar. I was just joking with him. He says he sells bricks and mortar. I say, I too sell bricks. The only problem is that he sells bricks and mortar made of mud. I sell bricks and mortar made of gold. If you put them on the weighing scale, they're both 1.5 kg. Mine comes at 1 kg. Mine is at $80,000 per brick. Yours is at maybe 2,000 naira per brick. But they basically shape the same way, if you remember, and there's not much difference. So be careful. Whatever you do, buy a product that can preserve your wealth. Yes, that can preserve your wealth in terms of FX volatility, in terms of inflation, in terms of interest rate. How do you do that? To do that, look at it very simply. If someone says to you, I want to buy a house of 100 million, the challenge is, can you truly fix the price of the house over a 24-month period in Nigeria? There's inflation, there's this, there's that. By the time you are talking, you'll be fighting at the end of 6 months already because the value of the house would have gone from 100 million to 117 million. And I'll show you very quickly. The only thing you've got to do now is just try to convert the national housing cash balance portfolio away from cash. And that's my plea. Everyone in this room should work with Dr. Adelakun to please beg the federal government that any cash left in Federal Mortgage Bank should be converted away from Naira into gold. Because if they don't, That money will be half by the time you talk next year, if not just 1/3. And it's obvious. And anyone who is having a pension fund to his account should go and check it. If it's in Naira, you're in trouble. Because by the time you finish your so-called retirement, you'll be paid the 50 million Naira, but you would have just bought 1/3 of what you planned to buy when you thought you started. If you bought gold, you make more sense, and I'll show you very shortly. So, low-risk class assets, that's what gold is. You have 1,000,001 of them. Housing is one. But if you look at gold and you look at Naira and you look at the gold outperforms it. So why do you want to keep your money in Naira? Why do you want to keep your money in dollar? If you looked at fixed income, see, if I bought 1 ounce of gold in 1999 at 6,000 Naira, today that gold is 1.7 million, or 2 million really. But if I kept that money in a fixed account, it's that same 6,000 is just what? Basically, I've actually lost money because inflation came and took it all away, so I lost 0.25. Why wouldn't you be smart enough to get a 29,000% return and be so daft enough to go and keep your money in cash and get a -25? So we've got many issues of yield, a lot of issues of medium, long-term risk, everybody. We know what it is, and therefore, if you truly are trying to solve your problem, honestly, balance your portfolio. To balance your portfolio, don't put all your egg in one basket. I'm not saying buy gold at every time, but please consider at least 25% of your investment for your housing, even for your life, in gold. If you're able to do that and you're able to diversify your portfolio, keep some in property, but keep everything everywhere else. At least 25% of your money must go into gold. I've shown you how to start. You already have the key in your hand, so please use it. If you use it, what will then happen is that the uncertainties that is plaguing the system hopefully can be managed. And this is 1 minute more, and I'll be out of here. See, anyone who wants to buy a house can listen to me for just 1 more minute. If you wanted to buy a 100 million Naira house, or you wanted to deliver a 100 million Naira property, on month 0, you said to the guy, bring 30%. 15 months later, please bring 40%. 24 months later, bring 20%. 30 months later, bring 10%. Let me show you what will happen. So this guy then went and took a loan from his friend, 100 million. He gave 30 million to the guy who was going to build the house. He kept the 70 million. He had a very smart advisor around him. That smart advisor said to him, take the money, put it in the bank. So they gave him an interest, 11%. So he was earning interest. And as he was earning interest, he was paying all his installments. At the end of the day, he thought it was smart. He had an interest element of 15 million on 70 million invested over the period. Fantastic, isn't it? The other idiot, like me, only got 100 million, was very smart, paid 30 million, took the 70 million, put it under his pillow, locked it up. But he didn't do anything. Every time they told me to come and pay, I simply brought out the 40% and came. When I got to the man's house, he said, see, the price of cement has gone up, the price of iron rod has gone up, the money that you're supposed to pay, you no longer 40,000, you understand 40 million is 57 million. I still pay him, I keep the balance. At the end of the day, to be able to get the house from him, I had to go and look for my girlfriend and boyfriend, beg them to give me 17 million Naira extra. See, but one guy was smarter. He bought gold with 70 million. Because he bought gold with 70 million, he got 79.286 ounces. And all he did was just sell the gold each time he needed to pay for his whatever. And when he finished, he had 33 million Naira left. That 33 million Naira will pay for not just a house, it would also pay for the furniture. It would also give him a very peaceful coexistence with his neighbor. Because I've seen many people who move into houses when they are still debtors, and I can tell you if a small boy plays football in front of their house and shoots it against them, that's when they'll come out and say, who's your daddy? It's not the problem, it's because the man has not yet balanced his account. Anyway, so we know now, please don't waste your time. Get the regular habit of trying to put money into gold. Make sure that you convert anything that you are holding when you are building a house into gold. If you do so, hopefully I'll see you this time next year as a richer person, a much more prosperous person. I thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. God bless you.
Thank you very much, sir. Round of applause for Tunde Kwame, Chairman Dukia Gold. And definitely we'll be richer by this time next year. All right, we will just take one more presentation. He was here earlier on, somehow we skipped him. Shall we please welcome up to the podium and for his presentation, Rent-to-Own Scheme and Other Incentive for Promoting Affordable Housing, Oladapo Fake, General Manager, Group Head Strategy and Performance Management, Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. You have 8 minutes, sorry.
Good evening, everybody. I'm consoling myself that the MC has decided to keep the best for last. Despite the fact that somebody has bedazzled us with gold, I feel inadequate to now talk about properties again. But we got to do this. I have some slides I've sent to the tech guys. Yeah, thank you very much. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I want to appreciate Dr. Adelako for inviting me here. I work with the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, but for the purpose of being here, I'm putting up this, do I call it a disclaimer or a disclosure? Second slide, please. That I'm here, the contents of this paper are purely personal. I'm here on my own bill, and I'm not in any way representing the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. So when it comes to questions and answers, if there are questions surrounding that, I have very able colleagues in the house, a senior colleague who is here, Dr. Yagweaju, and a former board member as well who are here. Please address your questions on FMBN to them. So I'm talking about incentives, and particularly going to drill down on the rent to own. So what are incentives essentially? Let's start from the rudimentary and the basic. So an incentive is a powerful tool. So an incentive is a powerful tool that you use to influence certain desired behavior or action. And it's often adopted by governments and businesses, according to Wikipedia. And there are a number of incentives. So incentives could be financial. Then when you have financial, they could be monetary, they could be fiscal. Fiscal are tax or grants, subsidies, loans, or rebates that you provide to businesses, basically, and even economic sector. Financial incentives could also be monetary. If they are monetary, you are looking at cash reserve ratios. Basically, those tools, open market operations, basically those tools that the central banks will use to adopt to help to boost a sector of the economy or to boost businesses. Incentives could also be regulatory. And when you talk about regulatory, you're looking at around being flexible around project approvals, around development rights. So this is what the law says, or this is what is required or mandated. But yeah, we want to provide an incentive for this sector. So let's relax the rules a bit, make it a bit flexible for people and attractive for people to invest in such areas or such businesses or such sectors of the economy. So they could be regulatory, and they could also be funding as well. So when incentives are in the nature of funds, you are looking at direct or indirect funding to ease development or to ease operating expenses that the investors would normally encounter in such areas of business. Now, looking at the literature around it, it is necessary that when an incentive is applied, it must satisfy 3 major criteria. Now, these criteria are, the first one is that it must be meaningful. That means it should pass the but-for test. Meaning, but for this incentive, this wouldn't have happened. If it would have happened without the incentive being put in place, then it is not meaningful. It was not necessary in the first instance. That's the first test. The second test is that it must be, in my own words, true. It must be transparent, it must be consistent, it must be accessible. And the target beneficiaries for such incentives must understand the nature of the incentive, they must anticipate it and be able to access it, and they must also understand, not just to access it, but they must also understand there are restrictions surrounding this incentive, there are requirements you must meet. Therefore, it must not be anything goes anyhow. even when you have tried to provide an incentive, it must not become an all-commerce affair. It must not become an unregulated jungle. Dog eat dogs. Anybody can do anything once because, government says it wants us to do or engage in this business. The third criterion is that it must be market appropriate, meaning that it must reflect local needs and constraints, and such as the market demand. It must be appropriate to the political climate. It must be responsive to the affordability needs and local cost levels as well. So basically, these are the three tests that an incentive must meet. Now, the recent COVID-19 outbreak that we experienced in the year 2020, and I still believe we are still going through the withdrawal syndromes of trying to overcome that, really brought out the need for governments, and I use the word impose incentives. I usually want to introduce incentives to encourage, but the governments were forced to impose incentives and measures targeted at renters and home buyers, and as well as landlords and other actors to stabilize housing markets when the COVID outbreak broke out. And a number of them were targeted. For tenants and home buyers, we saw such incentives as the suspension of evictions. So even if the rental agreement says you don't pay for 3 months, the landlord has the right to throw you out. Government has to come in and say, no, we're suspending evictions even when people default after 3 months. Extending rental contracts, so even if the contract had to expire after 2 years, because you are not sure that people whose rental contracts will expire and they will have new properties to move in, government said, no, necessarily you must extend. The landlord was forced to extend the rental contract to the convenience of the renter. And so many other subsidized rental payments, deferred rental payments, freezing rent increases, reducing rents, were all targeted to ease the housing market for renters. For homeowners, and most especially those who were servicing mortgages on the homes that they have provided for the market, governments brought such incentives as forbearance for the mortgages. So the landlord who was paying his own mortgage and renting out the property had some succor in terms of he was not forced to, if he couldn't pay on the mortgage for the property, there was some forbearance granted by government. Suspension of foreclosures, helping banks to lend to intending home builders and developers as well, supporting mortgage repayments, and then deferring tax that the homeowners or the landlords should have paid on their properties. And then for other actors within the housing sector, the suspension of utility bill payments, providing emergency shelter, and then supporting the construction sector. So you had a myriad of incentives that governments were forced to introduce into the housing sector to stabilize the sector while it was trying to address the health challenge created by COVID. And then, of course, when you look at this, you see the graph shows how many countries actually adopted such incentives. And popular for the tenants was the suspension of evictions. Popular for homeowners was the forbearance on mortgages, and popular for other actors was that of suspending utility payments, just to ease the market. And then another issue is when you're looking at his incentives, at what point do you want to introduce the incentives? Is it at the project initiation stage that you could have governments letting out or giving out public land for use? That's an incentive. That's at the project initiation stage. So you could crowd all your efforts at introducing incentives at that point. Is it at the point in which the developer is coming for approvals, coming for necessary statutory things that must be done and approved? So you could crowd in a lot of other incentives into that stage, so there are flexibility around it. It was supposed to be a low-density area, but because you want to incentivize the construction of more houses, you can say, okay, well, instead of just 6 flats, we allow you to go 10 flats, 8 flats, so that you have more housing units. So you have a number of stages. You could be at the construction stage in which institutions or government could come in to say, oh, we're giving you funding or we're giving you some tax waivers, so we encourage you to, or we are reducing the cost of some materials. And so you could have a lot of entry points in which to introduce this incentive. And the whole point is to drive down the cost at the end of the day. So why rent to own? So we want to consider rent to own as one of such incentives. However, the idea is that the rent to own is not necessarily government driven, it's not a government initiative, but we see a lot of real estate investors and developers and financial institutions coming up with rent to own as their own form of incentive. For an example, is the federal mortgage backed loan. So yes, in the country, and a number of the earlier speakers have alluded to that, the cost of rent could be as high as 60% of the monthly income of a household, which exceeds the 33.3% according to international labor laws. And then, of course, you have to pay rent 2-3 years in advance instead of monthly. And then, of course, Nigerians face a huge pressure in terms of rental obligations. So in today's housing market, many struggle to find affordable housing options that fit their budget. And the rent-to-own financing is a unique approach to bridge the gap between renting and owning a home. So typically you have, a rent-to-own typically is a documented transaction. There's a tangible property, a housing property, which a owner will lease in exchange for weekly, monthly, or annual payments with an option for the renter at some point to purchase the house. So it is different from the traditional mortgage financing because the rent-to-own allows buyers to build equity into the property before they purchase it. So they pay their rent, and it's understood, it's part of the agreement that part of the rent they are paying is either taken wholly or partly as equity into the property. And then, of course, this approach is particularly beneficial for buyers because it eases them, when they have affordability challenges, eases them into home ownership. And therefore, sellers as well, their houses are not standing empty because they don't have buyers. They could get somebody to come into the property, be paying some form of rent, there's some cash flow, the house is not degenerating because you are looking for people who cannot afford. So it comes in, the rent-to-own comes in as a win-win arrangement for both the buyer and the seller. Now, there are two types of rent-to-own. There's one called the lease option, and then there's the rent purchase agreement, which is basically the true rent-to-own. The difference between these two, basically, is that under the lease option, the agreement only gives the renter an option to buy. He may step back and say, oh, after thinking it carefully, I don't want to no longer commit myself into transaction, I'm moving elsewhere, and then they both sign off on that. Of course, he may lose some form of deposit or part of what he has paid over. But for a true rent-to-own, there is a commitment on the part of the buyer that the buyer has committed to buying up the property at the end of the day. So, maybe at this point I need to eat back my words. I said I'm just look at me that I'm not related to FMBN in whatever way, but now I have to fall back to using the FMBN example for the rent-to-own. I hope you will forgive me for that. So, looking at the FMBN rent-to-own product, the purpose is that it provides a rental arrangement for a virtual home ownership for the rental of the property. The tenure is as long as 30 years, depending on the age of the prospective buyer. The interest rate is 7%. It is fixed throughout the duration. The maximum loan and the maximum price for the property is up to 50 million, but subject to affordability based on the income of the person interested. The security for a person who is formally employed, the security is the employer will undertake to deduct the portion of rent and then remit to FMBN, and then there's a direct debit mandate. For somebody who is in the informal sector, he provides a mandate and instruction for his bank to make those deductions from his account and remit to Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, and provides 2 guarantees, and that serves as security for both the formal and informal sectors. The repayments can be monthly, quarterly, or annually, but it's still subject to the 33% of the household income. The subject property is, however, limited to those housing units that are funded by the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, so they are not yet open to properties in the market. And then, of course, there is a limitation that for anybody who wishes to enjoy this facility, you should not have enjoyed either, you should not previously not have enjoyed a mortgage facility from the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria or a construction loan. So basically, it's to ensure that it is basically for first-time homeowners. And so there is some conditions attached to it. I'm sure we're getting this script. We can take a look at that. And then from the FMBN website, we can get more details around that. But there is a tenancy agreement that provides, spells out the terms of the tenancy. There is a sales agreement, and that what makes it a rent-to-own. And then, of course, there is an arbitration agreement when there is dispute in the course of the agreement. But it is important to note that once a tenant defaults, the payment of rent over a 6-month period is subject to eviction, and then the property can be reassigned to somebody else. So in closing, we started out by talking about incentives. Incentives remain critical to development and stabilization of housing markets across the world, as demonstrated by government responses during the COVID crisis. Now, incentives are a mixed bag of targeted measures to achieve specific objectives. So when you're looking at incentives, you have to determine what type of incentives do we need. We need to determine what is the timing. Is it at the project initiation stage? Is it at the construction stage? Is it even at the tying-up stage? Is it at the purchase stage? You need to determine the timing most appropriately. And you need to also determine the target. Are we targeting the buyers? Are we targeting the sellers? So who do you want to incentivize in this situation? So it could be straitjacketed. It could be a mixed bag of a number of options, but there must be careful thinking around that. The rent-to-own scheme as one of those incentives driven by the investor or driven by financial institutions serves as a viable mechanism to drive home ownership. And I've talked about a number of the advantages. And in closing, I want to thank you for giving me these few minutes and paying attention. Thank you so very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir, for that presentation on rent-to-own scheme and other incentives for promoting affordable housing. Mr. Oladabo Fakaye, shall we give him another round of applause for that presentation? Thank you, sir. Now, because of time, we will just take one comment and one question only. If your question can be asked later, you can meet any of them later on their way out for a one-on-one question. But if your question or comment is really important, we can just take one question or one comment. If not, we'll leave all questions and all comments for personal interaction. All right, so I assume that we will leave all the questions and comments for personal interaction. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, to round up today's proceedings before we go for lunch, or shall we say before we go for refreshment, and shall we welcome to the microphone, to the podium, Dr. Adebayo Aziz, Managing Consultant, EMRA Consulting, to wrap up today's proceedings. Thank you.
I'd like us to put our hands together for the MC. He's been doing a great work since morning. We want to thank everyone for your patience. Thank you for staying up till now with us. I'm not going to do an extensive roundup today, but from what we have done since morning, the word that have been coming out is implementation. Implementation. You come to see that if we do a review of what we have done in 6 years going through this program, the problems are clear, and each year we come to mention them. And it has reached a stage where we need to begin to take action. And I think as we discuss further tomorrow, we'll be able to put all those ideas. And I'm happy from today, people are not just talking about the problem, they are also making effort to identify the solutions. And I think we'll be able to drive the discussion further tomorrow, and then we'll come up with documents that will go to individuals and government agencies that are in position to be able to move us to the stage of implementation. And this is very important so that our meetings and conferences on a year-to-year basis, they don't remain in the realm of rhetoric and discussions. We have reached a stage where we need to begin to take steps to activate some of the ideas that are coming, particularly as we exchange ideas with what's happening in other climes. What are they doing there that is different that we can also learn from? So let's come tomorrow early enough so that we'll be able to start also early enough. There are a lot of other very interesting and enticing engagements that we have in store if you look at the program tomorrow. In the area of technology, what should we be doing in a new way to reduce costs? In terms of housing, what are the new designs that we should have? Among other discussions will be our focus tomorrow. And as we round up tomorrow, we'll be able to come up with action points to drive affordable housing in Nigeria. We want to thank you very much for taking time to be part of this conference, and we look forward to having all of you tomorrow. Thank you. God bless. Just before we go, I think we are going to have a photograph for, please, can you just come down. Let's put our hands together for our presenters and people that have come to share a success story with us. And I'm looking forward to getting some good from...
I just want to say that, please, how many people have registered successfully? Can I see your hands up? How many people have bought gold successfully? Pardon? Yeah, it works because you can buy 5,000 naira worth, minimum. Please make sure you do so because they will clock you out in 5 minutes. You understand? So if you do it, the system is smart enough to know who registered between 5 and 5:30. At 5:30, you're clocked out, and that will no longer be like this is an invitation to treat. So the contract elapses at 5:30. Thank you.
Thank you. So try and make use of that opportunity.
All right, so the arrangement for refreshments for your meal, the VIP, as we had for the break, will go upstairs. The rest of us, just behind the exhibition booths, we will have our lunch over there. So the VIPs and our guests, the presenters, will go upstairs for their lunch. The rest of us will go behind the presentation booths, the exhibition booths for our lunch. If you are in doubt, just ask the ushers where you're going to go. Thank you very much and have a good evening. See you early tomorrow morning.